We are incredibly grateful you're here with us today. Before we begin, a small, humble request. Our team puts immense effort into creating these Jim Rohn Insights videos for you. If you find value in these messages, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel. Your support truly fuels our work, allowing us to keep this content flowing. Thank you, from the bottom of our hearts, for making that possible. And, of course, we wish you and your loved ones the very best of health and well-being. You see it everywhere. People who know better but don't do better. People with brilliant ideas, big dreams, and thoughtful plans, yet very little follow through. And you start to wonder, how can that be? How can someone spend years learning, thinking, and preparing, and still never move? Still never follow through? Still never do what they already know to do? I'll tell you what I've discovered. There's a gap. A quiet, little gap between knowing and doing. And that gap is where most dreams die. It doesn't happen with a loud crash. It's not some big, dramatic mistake or failure. No.
Most dreams die silently.
They fade away in the space between I should and I did. They disappear in the pause between intention and action. If you're not careful, that space becomes your whole life. A life full of good intentions and missed opportunities. A life of, I could have. I almost did. I was planning to. That's not the life you want. It's not the life anyone wants, but it's the life most people end up with. Not because they didn't know what to do, but because they never did what they knew. It's a painful realization to look back and understand this. It wasn't a lack of information that held you back. It wasn't a lack of opportunity. It wasn't even bad luck. It was hesitation, delay, and excuses. That quiet decision to stay in motionless comfort, rather than moving into the discomfort of action. Now, I'm not saying knowledge doesn't matter. Of course, it does. But knowledge is just the seed. It's not the harvest. It's not the fruit. To get the results, you have to act. You have to move. You have to do. This discussion isn't about more motivation. It's not about gathering more knowledge. It's not about waiting for the right time or hoping for the right mood. It's about closing the gap, the one between knowing and doing. Because that gap is the difference between who you are and who you could become. And every day you leave that gap unaddressed, the life you really want slips further away. This is your opportunity to close that gap deliberately, consciously, and permanently. It's time to stop rehearsing and start building. Stop preparing and start practicing. Stop waiting and start doing. Once you begin doing, even imperfectly, even inconsistently, you step out of theory and into transformation. That's where real progress begins. Knowledge is everywhere. It's in your pocket. It's on your bookshelf. It's in the conversations you've already had. There is no shortage of books, courses, audio talks, or advice. Yet, despite all this knowledge, very few people actually change. Very few people take what they know and put it into practice long enough to see results. You can go to the bookshop right now and find 100 books on money, health, relationships, or time management. The problem isn't a lack of information. That hasn't been the problem for a long time. The problem is that knowing has become a substitute for doing. People feel good because they read a chapter, watched a video, or listened to a talk. For a moment, they get the emotional reward that normally comes from action, without actually doing anything. It's like reading about push-ups and feeling like you worked out. You didn't. But your brain got just enough stimulation to think you did. Knowledge without action is deceptive. It creates the illusion of progress. You feel like you're growing, but you're not. You're collecting insight, but insight doesn't change your body. Insight doesn't build a business. Insight doesn't save money. Insight doesn't fix habits. Only action does that. Most people don't need another breakthrough idea. They already have the right idea. What they need is to act on it. Apply it. Repeat it. Keep doing it long enough to see results. That's where they fall short. Not in understanding, but in execution. You don't get credit for what you know. The world pays for what you do, for what you deliver, for what you follow through on. That's why someone with less knowledge but more discipline will always outperform the person with great knowledge but no consistent action. The most dangerous place to be is thinking you're making progress when you're really just circling the runway. You keep reading. You keep planning. You keep preparing. But you never take off. You never get airborne. Why? Because motion is not progress. Learning is not growth. Thinking is not building. Only action crosses that line. If all it took was knowing, everyone would be rich, fit, and fulfilled. But that's not how it works. Knowing is the easy part. Doing is where the work begins. That's where the resistance shows up. That's where excuses start to creep in. That's where you find out if you're serious or just interested. So, ask yourself, what do you already know that you still haven't done? What habit have you studied, talked about, and written down, but not practiced? What opportunity have you researched but not acted on? That's the gap. That's the difference between staying where you are and stepping into what's next. Don't confuse learning with living. Don't confuse studying with doing. At some point, you've got to stop consuming and start executing. At some point, you've got to stop gathering information and start applying it. That's the moment everything starts to change. So, if people already know what to do, why don't they do it? The answer, more often than not, isn't a lack of motivation. It's fear. It's hesitation. It's the comfort of staying where it's safe. As long as you're still planning, you can't fail. As long as you're still getting ready, you don't have to face the possibility that it might not work. You see, knowing feels safe. Knowing keeps you protected. You can live in theory forever and never risk embarrassment. Never risk failure. Never risk finding out that your best effort still wasn't enough. That's why people stay stuck. Not because they don't want progress, but because they're afraid of what doing might reveal. Perfectionism is another trap. People think if they can't do it perfectly, they shouldn't do it at all. They spend so much time trying to figure out the best method, the perfect plan, and the right moment, that they miss the opportunity to make progress with what they already have. The irony is, the only way to get better at something is to do it badly at first. You'll never perfect something you don't practice. But perfectionists wait. They keep sharpening the pencil until there's no lead left. And still, the paper is blank. Why? Because perfection isn't the goal. Movement is. Until you're willing to be imperfect, you won't be consistent. And if you're not consistent, you won't be successful. Then there's overwhelm. People say they don't know where to start, so they don't start at all. They look at the entire mountain instead of just the next step. They think about the whole book they want to write instead of just the first page. They worry about losing 50 pounds instead of walking around the block. But every big change is made up of small actions. If you focus on the next small action, you can bypass the overwhelm completely. And for some people, it's simply comfort. They've grown comfortable in their current routine, even if that routine isn't producing the results they want. Change requires disruption. It requires energy. It requires effort. It's easier to stay where things are familiar, even if they're unfulfilling. But you have to ask yourself, is comfort worth your future? Is the ease of today worth the regret of tomorrow? Every day you stay stuck in knowing, you're giving up ground. You're trading movement for maintenance. And maintenance never creates progress. You were not built to rehearse forever. You weren't meant to sit on the edge of potential, planning and preparing while your opportunities expire. You were built to move, to try, to apply, to do. Everything you want, growth, success, and impact, it all lives on the other side of doing. So now, the illusion has to end. Knowing is not enough. You know that. You've seen it. You've felt it. And now you understand why people stay stuck, because staying stuck feels safer than stepping into the unknown. But safety is not success. Safety is not progress. Safety is not freedom. If you want change, you've got to break the pattern. You've got to stop settling for the security of knowing and start building the courage to do. That's the only way forward. That's the only way the gap gets closed. Most people are waiting to feel ready before they start. Waiting to feel confident. Waiting to feel motivated. But here's what I found. Those feelings don't show up first. They show up later. They don't lead the process. They follow it. You don't act because you're motivated. You get motivated because you act. You don't move because you're confident. You build confidence by moving. The feelings everyone waits for are produced by doing, not the other way around. And the people who figure that out, they stop waiting. They stop hesitating. They start. Discipline is what bridges that gap. Discipline is doing what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It doesn't negotiate. Discipline just shows up and does the work. Do you know what separates amateurs from professionals? It's not talent. It's not resources. It's not even intelligence. It's discipline. Amateurs act when they feel like it. Professionals act because it's time to act. They don't let feelings decide the schedule. They don't let moods determine movement. They move no matter what. You don't need to be extraordinary to start doing. You just need to be committed. You need to decide that showing up matters more than feeling good. You need to decide that action matters more than comfort. You need to decide that the life you want is worth more than the excuses you've been using to avoid it. Doing doesn't require perfection. That's another trap. People think they can't start until they know how to do it flawlessly. But here's the truth. Nothing is flawless in the beginning. Doing is messy. Doing is clumsy. Doing is uncomfortable. But it's necessary. The only way to get good at something is to first be willing to be bad at it. Discipline says, I'll do it anyway. I'll show up tired. I'll show up uncertain. I'll show up nervous. But I'll show up. And if you keep showing up, you build something powerful. You build resilience. You build momentum. You build identity. You stop thinking of yourself as someone who tries and start becoming someone who follows through. And that identity matters. When doing becomes part of who you are, you don't have to force it anymore. You don't have to argue with yourself every day. You just do. Like brushing your teeth. Like tying your shoes. It becomes automatic. That's the goal. Not to force action forever, but to practice it long enough that it becomes part of you. Most people are trying to feel their way into action, but the real path is acting your way into feeling. Show up first. Confidence will come later. Do it tired. Energy will come later. Do it afraid. Courage will come later. The emotions you're looking for live on the other side of movement. So, start small. One action, one task, one habit. Don't wait to feel ready. Just begin. Keep your actions simple. Keep your promises to yourself. Every time you follow through, you prove to yourself that you're serious. That you're building something. That you're becoming the kind of person who does. That's what changes everything. Not talent. Not knowledge. Not a perfect plan. What changes everything is consistent action. Repeated disciplines. Quiet, unglamorous follow-through. Not once in a while. Daily. That's how the gap gets closed. That's how knowing becomes doing. That's how dreams stop dying and start becoming real. People are always waiting. Waiting for the right time. Waiting for the new year. Waiting for Monday. Waiting for the pressure to ease up. Waiting for motivation to strike. Waiting until it feels right. And while they wait, time passes. Opportunities fade. Dreams get dusty. And life keeps moving. You've probably heard people say, it's just not a good time right now. But think about it. When is it ever a good time? When is it ever convenient to change your life? When does the calendar clear, the stress vanish, and the skies open up to say, now's the perfect moment? It doesn't happen, because perfect conditions don't exist. The right time is not a date. It's a decision. That's the only way anything important ever begins. Not because everything lined up perfectly, but because someone decided to stop waiting and start moving. They said, ready or not, I'm going. And that moment, that decision, is what makes the difference. People disguise fear as planning. They call it timing. They call it wisdom. But underneath, it's hesitation. It's the part of you that wants progress without discomfort. Growth without effort. Results without risk. But you and I both know it doesn't work like that. If you're not willing to start when it's messy, uncertain, and inconvenient, you'll never start at all. Action doesn't begin when you're ready. It begins when you're committed. Committed to the outcome. Committed to the process. Committed to doing it now, not later. Because later turns into never. And the longer you wait, the harder it gets. You don't need perfect conditions. You need a decision. You need a step. You need to decide that you're starting today. You may not know everything. You might not feel ready. But you're not going to sit in the same spot another year hoping for perfect. That's how you cross the gap. That's how progress begins. You'll never feel 100% ready. That's not how the mind works. It's wired for safety. It will always find a reason to wait. It will always point to some detail that's not quite in place yet. But your future is not waiting for your comfort. It's waiting for your courage. It's waiting for you to step, ready or not. Don't wait for the fear to disappear. It won't. Do it afraid. Don't wait for the plan to be flawless. It won't be. Do it uncertain. Don't wait for conditions to be ideal. They rarely are. Do it anyway. Because the act of doing creates clarity. It creates experience. It creates results. And all those things you've been waiting for, they show up after you begin, not before. Everybody wants a shortcut. Everyone's looking for the hack, the secret, the one move that'll fast-track everything. But the real shortcut, the only shortcut, is daily. It's not a trick. It's not hidden. It's not complicated. It's consistency. Small, simple actions, repeated every single day. That's it. Success doesn't reward the most intense. It rewards the most consistent. You don't need massive days. You don't need to do everything at once. You just need to do something every day. That's how progress builds. That's how discipline gets stronger. That's how the gap between knowing and doing finally disappears. Most people burn out because they try to do too much too soon. They get excited, go all in for a few days, and then quit. But the ones who win, they pace themselves. They keep it small, keep it simple, keep it daily. They don't need hype. They don't need a crowd. They just build quietly, one day at a time. Discipline isn't loud. It doesn't make a scene. But it shows up day after day. Whether it feels good or not. Whether conditions are perfect or not. Discipline doesn't care about excitement. It's about decision. It's about follow-through. It's about doing the thing, even when you're tired, bored, or distracted. The goal is to not go backwards. The goal is to keep moving. To show up. To do the work. Some days will be great. Some days will feel like a grind. That's normal. But if you keep doing, you keep growing. You keep building. And eventually, you arrive. Doing daily is about rhythm. It's about routine. It's about building a structure that supports your goals. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to debate it. You just do it, because it's who you are now. You don't wait to feel like it. You already decided, and now you just follow through. Once the doing becomes automatic, you've already won. Because now the gap is gone. You're no longer stuck in knowing. You're not circling, planning, or hesitating. You're living. You're building. You're becoming. Doing daily isn't flashy. It's not impressive at first. But over time, it becomes unstoppable. It becomes the reason your life begins to look different. Not all at once, but one consistent day at a time. You know what you need to do. You've known for a while now. That's not the problem. The problem is the delay, the hesitation, the waiting. The false comfort of knowing without doing. That's where most dreams fall apart. Not from lack of desire. Not from lack of knowledge. But from lack of execution. You get to decide. You always get to decide. So, make the decision now. Close the gap. Stop waiting. Stop hoping. Stop preparing forever. Start doing. Start moving. Start building. Start practicing. Do it without the perfect plan. Do it without the perfect conditions. Do it without waiting to feel ready. Just begin. The difference between knowing and doing is everything. It's the difference between almost and actually. Between potential and progress. Between the life you talk about and the life you live. So, take the next step today. Not tomorrow. Not later. Today. Even if it's small. Even if it's uncertain. Even if it's uncomfortable. Take it. Because once you start doing, everything changes.